Hi, I'm Stu Kagan, and welcome to Born Scrappy, the podcast for scrap metal exporters and traders. Join me in conversation with some of the most experienced traders and operators that have helped shape this incredible industry. In today's episode, I sit with Garrett Tracey. Garrett is the former Chief Operating Officer and Chief Commercial Officer at Sims Brothers Recycling and has recently gone on his own and started Recycling Revenue Partners. Garrett is a super knowledgeable guy and a great guy to sit and have a chat with. In today's episode, we talk about learning from your mistakes, going deeper than price, staying top of mind, commercial versus operations, confirmation bias, and so much more. So let's jump in with Garrett. But first, intro. Hey Garrett, how are you?
Good morning, Stu. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, good evening. It's all the same thing, right? Although
That's
for
right.
you, it's kind of both, right? What's the time where you are right now?
We're about 3 a.m.
3 a.m. That's
3 a.m. So yeah,
and it's not just for Born Scrappy, right? This is your new business now has you really, really hustling.
it does. When we talked about this opportunity, I said absolutely. I'll make any time work. For you, Stu. I'm honored that you asked me to come on. And when we spoke last, you were in the United States. I didn't know that you went back home to New Zealand. So when I said I'll make any time work, and 3 a.m. was open. Normally that would be a problem, but my nights are 4 or 5 a.m. right now. So I just kind of rolled into this a little bit. I did throw on the jacket to, so I could look
I
a little more
didn't.
presentable.
I didn't,
Um,
mate. Sorry.
Thank you.
Cool. Garrett, yeah, I mean, we're gonna delve into why you're having 3, 4 o'clock mornings at the moment, or nights, I should say.
Yeah.
Love it because it's gonna be um my game. We're talking entrepreneurship. I can't wait to go there. We're gonna go there. Let's first kick off with a little bit about Garrett. So how did you get into metal recycling? What have you been doing for 20 odd years, whatever it is? Tell us your story.
Yeah. So I started in scrap recycling. So let me go back a little bit further. I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio, Warren, Ohio. Classic Rust Belt. Most of my family, in one way or another, was in the steel business. I mean, you were either in auto manufacturing or you were in steel if you were in sort of Warren, Youngstown, Ohio. So the industry wasn't unfamiliar to me. Actually, my father was a marketing rep for different services that were selling to steel mills. So he was going to a steel mill for 40 years as I was being raised. But it, you know it was definitely not what I wanted to get into at all. I thought I enjoyed business. Went to Miami University. Had a professor my senior year, my capstone course, that just kind of said, you should stop by this booth, this company. I just think you'd be a good fit. He worked with them from a consulting basis, so he kind of knew the organization and the kind of people they looked for. And that company was the David J. Joseph Company, headquartered out of Cincinnati, which was an hour away from my main campus. So I knew nothing about it. I stopped by, talked to HR, dropped off a resume. When I graduated in '97, the job market for new grads was remarkably good. I mean, I was very, very, very fortunate, to the point where companies would come into classes your senior year and drop off their business cards and said, the first 10 people that call have a job, and not just a job, but a good job. I don't think that's true today, but there was a lot of options, for everybody, not just business folks or Miami grads, but it was just kind of universal. Started talking to DJ, and literally from conversation one, in the back of my mind, I said, this is incredibly interesting. I mean, I think I understood what they were telling me, but it was kind of like, hey, you're gonna run this business. Um, and the way you run it is going to determine your growth and your future in this whole industry. And I remember HR was telling me how when people got into the scrap business, they stayed in it forever, for the most part, and that was all foreign to me. So um, ended up getting an offer, and I got the offer the day I graduated um, from Miami, and I was sitting on a couple other offers, as were everybody. I wasn't a special person, and I told myself that day, I said, I have these offers. If I get one from DJ, that's where I'm going. And I got the day I graduated. My parents were in town. I remember the call, almost like it was yesterday. You know, Ended up accepting a couple days later because I didn't want to sound too anxious. Want to make sure I had the right package, and that was it. So I became a ferrous trader for DJ, which I thought was neat. I didn't realize, at the time, sort of how well positioned in the market they were, and sort of their leverage, their depth of knowledge, the opportunities that would come with it, the people I'd be working with. I was 21 years old. I just thought this is a neat job. So that was the launching pad, or the starting point for everything I've done in scrap for the last 26 years.
Okay, so fast forward, what is that? Like, we know you got started there, and then you spent. Did you stay at DJ?
I spent probably 5 or 6 years at DJ between trading and logistics. At that time, they wanted to really market the logistics services, move them out of house and sell them to the industry versus just a support function for their internal scrap yards and trading offices. And I thought that was a really neat opportunity. So spent 5 years at DJ. Got the opportunity to work for TMS International. They had some contracts in Southwest Ohio, and started talking to me about opening an office down there, a trading office to support what at that time was AK Steel, and the opportunity was great. So started working with TMS International. I did that for roughly about another 5 years. And one of my customers at that time was a company called Sims Brothers Recycling, which was a large, privately held family business scrap company in Central Ohio. And I was doing a lot of business with them on a trading brokerage function. And they need some help on both operations and the commercial side of the business. So they engaged me, over 6, 7, 8 months, talking about some opportunities. And it was, I was sort of mentored very early in my career that, the diversity of your experiences in this industry was going to help sort of dictate your path. And there was a lot of silos of business. In the States, you kind of got grouped into commercial, or you got grouped into operations. And you could do different functions within those silos, but they didn't mix very often. And I didn't understand that really from the beginning. I didn't, because I started to understand the business a little bit, and I realized, that they were just so interlinked. I mean, it's one thing to understand commercial and trading and procurement and sales, and operations is a different animal, but everyone touches the other side. So when I had the opportunity to sort of really dive into operations, even different support functions within the scrap company and industry, finance and HR, I knew that my opportunities were more broad at Sims Brothers Recycling. And so it was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. So moved from Cincinnati, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio. And that was about 16, 17 years ago. Did various roles for Sims Brothers Recycling. most recently, I was chief commercial officer and chief operating officer. So, sort of both silos report up to me. And
So did you fight
you know,
with yourself a lot?
I, you know what? I did because it's funny you say that because that's a struggle everywhere. You know, operations has their initiatives and commercial has their initiatives, and in seeing both sides and understanding both sides and managing both sides, it was eye opening. It was eye opening for me because uh, I would push certain things commercially that I didn't understand the operational consequences until I had both roles. And, I probably made bad decisions early in my career because of that. Um, I I still have great relationships at DJ where I started, and we get together at different levels, every so often, and that's actually something that we talk about a lot. I said, and that model has changed a little bit for them, but I kind of said, you in the industry are missing a huge opportunity, sort of siloing your key people in these sides because they're so intertwined. And I've beat that drum for about a decade to anybody who would listen, whether it be a trading company, a scrap company, um, anybody involved in recycling. That the business is too interlinked not to understand what the other side's doing, and for the right people, get them cross trained, because they're going to be. I'm such a better trader and commercial person because I understand operations.
100%.
And I'm such a better operations person because I understand commercial. And those opportunities are hard to find. And I
How
think
can you even run a company or one of these companies or even a division if you don't get both sides? Like, it is so difficult. It was the greatest blessing I ever had, was starting off in the yard for 7 or 8 years, right?
Mhm.
Just was where I landed, right? It just happened to be. And then I found my niche on the trading side. But there's no way I could have ended up running such a large company like I did if I didn't have that knowledge. I mean, I remember in Durban, South Africa, we had an operations manager named Donnie van Niekerk, and we had a commercial manager named Clayton Foster. And if they're listening, hi guys. But basically, they were the best at what they did. They were also really good buddies. They were good friends. But did I see fights? Like, this was when I was still coming through. I was probably like 24, 25, working in the yards, becoming a bit of a trader at the time. Like, I watched these guys almost fist fight on a daily basis because they didn't know or didn't actually care to know what the other party actually did on a day-to-day basis. They had their silo, and it was all about their silo, and that included their people in it. So if the commercial division upset the operations people
Yeah,
beneath them, like, then they stood up for their team and they went at it. They were good friends, but I tell you what, there were fights. And I think that happens everywhere in the world.
I think you're exactly right. And the companies that are most successful today, to your point, are the ones that have understand those synergies and have understood that the people running those businesses need to have a very good understanding of the interaction between commercial and operations. So I think the most successful companies, and there's a lot of very well ran scrap companies, small, medium, and large in the United States, and the ones that I see, and I just know that the processes, both operationally and commercially, are very, very sound. It's because the person at the top
Gets
understands
it.
that balance.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are listening, and if you are somebody who is maybe going through the journey and you're pushing to get in commercial or you're pushing to move to somewhere else, don't rush it. Like, the worst thing that could have happened to me, I think, if when I was 19, after 6 months or a year in the business, if I'd be moved into commercial, there's no way I could have run the company at a later stage. I wouldn't have been able to step up into that role. So get that experience, do the hard yards, and if it's 7 or 8 years, I promise you it'll pay off, right, Garrett? I mean, you're a perfect example. I mean, you've got to do those hard yards.
Yeah. So, Stu, you're 100% right. And when I started, the mantra was, scrap was bought, not sold. And there's a lot to that, but that was the drum that was beat sort of all the time from a lot of folks. And as my career sort of went on, I developed my own philosophy, right, wrong, or indifferent, that scrap is really, it's bought, it's transported, it's processed, it's upgraded, it's positioned, it's sold, and it's transported again. There's 5 really value-added steps in that process. And 30 years ago, I believe scrap was bought and not sold. Today, the competitive nature of the market sort of doesn't allow you to extract all your value just on the buy side. There's 6 other steps that really have to be, maximized for a company to be successful. And a lot of those 6 other steps are operational steps. So thus, I mean, 1 + 1 = 2. You have to run that side of it very well too for the organization to be successful. Take DJ, for example. And, like I said, I was very lucky to learn the commercial side of the business and get my start there. I fell into it backwards.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
but they're very good at what they do. And there's a lot of best practices there that will probably stay true forever. But I've seen even a shift after they were bought by Nucor that they are starting to move their commercial people and operations and their operation folks into commercial. It's a little bit more of a standard practice. Again, I'm not there, so I don't know how deep it is, but my connections and contacts, I see them sort of crossing over. And that's healthy for the company. That's healthy for the employee, especially if they're a key employee. It keeps them engaged. It keeps them learning. It keeps them wanting to do more. So the value is endless, and the companies that I see being successful are doing both of those things.
So, Garrett, you spent a lot of time on the commercial side, obviously, as we've just discussed. Can you think of a trade that you've had that really taught you something that will last forever? So it's usually something that went really badly or an issue that you had to deal with, and there were huge, significant learnings from that. Can you talk us through something like that?
Wow. So I consider myself a commercial trader at heart. That's where I started in business. That's what I love doing. That is something that just probably who I am fits the best into. Our industry is nothing but experiences. And I'm kind of circling around your answer a little bit because there's a little bit
here.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a point here. When I started, I would always ask, why are you in this 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later? And everybody would say, scraps in your blood. But the most common answer was, every day is different. I didn't understand that 27 years ago. But you're buying a commodity and you're selling a commodity on the commercial side. And I'm like, is there really that many renditions of that? Is that really possible? And every trade, you take a piece of experience out of. And for me, it's an aggregate of all those trades, both good and bad, because you're always going to have bad ones. And the only, I remember making a bad one in my early days, and I thought I was going to be, just absolutely hammered by upper management. And it was literally the opposite. It was, what happened? Why'd you do it? And what are we going to learn from it? And it I mean, that was unbelievable. I mean, like, it wasn't, hey, you lost $32,000 by pushing some paper the wrong way, or you lost, $300,000 or $400,000 by doing this. It was, we know that's going to happen. It is inevitable that trades will go south for different reasons. Why did this one go south? Well, I bought it before I sold it, or I sold it before I bought it. The market moved unpredictably. I was in this position. Did you have a contract? No, but had an agreement. My word was my sort of contract. I wasn't comfortable backing out. Okay, those are all great things. I think that one became a case study, for sort of young traders going forward, or part of the case study. But every trade, you better take something out of, good, bad, or indifferent, because that's all this business is. I mean, everybody knows there's no textbooks, there's no school to go to. So, it's not one, it's all of them. It really is all of them. So that sounds like an answer that's not an answer, but if you stop learning in this business, then you're going to stop growing. And that education can be, formal education. It could be informal. It could be, but most of it is doing the actual work. And there's no substitute for that.
And it's interesting because that's in operations and commercial. It's without actually getting your hands dirty and running operations. If you're talking logistics, go and run a fleet. Go and look at the costs. Go and analyze the costs of running a fleet. You will be much better by doing that. Commercially, do some trades, lose some money. You will get better from that experience. Like, that's it. Everything we do in this industry, we get better through the experiences, whether they're good experiences or bad experiences. And I think what your management did just showed they had a lot of experience, right? They knew, they were expecting it. You weren't going to get a slap on the wrist. You were just actually shown at that time. You were literally shown that, oh, wait, this might be normal. It's not acceptable, but it's expected, right? I've got to do better. I've got to make sure I learn from this. The biggest mistake you can make is not learning from a mistake.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. If that trade continued to happen, then that would be my fault, because I didn't learn anything. Anybody that's worked for me over my whole career, I always tell them, mistakes will be made all the time, but we can't be having the same conversation continually, because that tells me you didn't learn anything from that mistake. I make mistakes all the time. And so that's not the bar. The bar is, are they being repeated? And sometimes, I look at myself, especially if I'm managing somebody, did I give that person the proper communication, the proper support to not make that mistake again? Was I clear with the direction or my guidance? And sometimes I look back and I say, well, no, I wasn't. So this happened again, probably because of my lack of management. So that's my mistake. And so I have to sort of, kind
learn
of
from your own mistake. You're making
learn from the mistake.
Doesn't matter what level that mistake is made. When you make a mistake, you need to learn from it. Sticking to the commercial side, but flipping it around a little bit. You ran Sims Brothers for quite a while. You obviously had a focus of bringing the metal in. You need to buy metal to sell it. Buying is massively important for all metal recycling companies. We've got a lot of competition out there, which is the other people we're speaking to, right? All metal recyclers have got opposition. How did you find an edge at Sims Brothers or anywhere else you've been to bring the material in? Was it marketing? Was it pricing? What did you do? Build a brand? I don't know what it might be. How did you use to focus on bringing the metal in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Pricing is, when the accounts are large, and for lack of a better word, sexy, the big accounts that are producing a lot of material, that are well known in the industry. When I came to Sims Brothers Recycling, I knew about accounts that they had in 97, 98, 99 because of the trader wire, of information bouncing back and forth, between the traders at different organizations. Sims is doing this with this account. And, fast forward 25 years later, those counts are still there. You almost have to take price off the table because everybody is going to have a very similar option on pricing. Manufacturers, for the most part, they want to manufacture what they're good at manufacturing. They don't want to worry about that, in their world, waste stream that's coming out of the back of the plant. And obviously we all know it's not waste, but I've heard that term sort of batted around quite a few times.
I understand. Yep.
So what's the value proposition? It starts with service. Some of the larger accounts are heavily service related, as far as just the amount of effort that needs to go into collecting the recyclables, the scrap metals, plastics, papers, glass, ferrous, non-ferrous, at the facilities and removing them. We were very successful at Sims Brothers with taking the knowledge that we had about recycling and transplanting it physically into the plant. And so how do you do that? You take one of your employees that understands recycling and you put them on the floor at the manufacturer. Now all of a sudden there's a representative on the floor that by design knows more about those recyclables than probably every person on the floor combined. That's just because that's the nature of the business. They're making cars, or they're making appliances or widgets, and they're not worried about what's coming off the back end of the stamper. But we are. And here's how we maximize your revenues. Here's how you sort. Here's how you transport. And those value propositions really resonate with the manufacturers. They love information. They love timely information. I think that's pretty universal today across manufacturers or across scrap recycling companies. They're all coming to the table with good reporting. There's sort of a sustainability reporting that is being developed sort of even today, of how they want to see that data, zero to landfill or landfill diversions. They want to see data in a little bit different way. The large companies have gotten pretty good at understanding what that vendor needs and tailoring what they can do for that company. So that's a piece of it. If you're relying on price, there's going to be somebody that comes in that trumps you at some point. So go deeper than price. And the deeper you go into that economy, the more things you handle for that manufacturer or vendor, the more sticky that relationship will be.
I was about to say sticky factor. Exactly right.
Yeah.
I always used to tell my account executives two things. One was that it's a partnership. So if you treat them as a partner, not a customer, you look at them very, very differently, right? Yeah. So you're trying to maximize their profitability or maximize their sorting, whatever it might be. You're trying to help them do that. By helping them, you're adding value. As a partner, you will have a long, fruitful relationship. The second they don't see you as a partner and they see you as a parasite and somebody who is just there to make a buck, then it's about price. And if you're not giving the best price, you're gone tomorrow. The other thing I used to say was, for most of these customers of ours, we're a logistics company.
Yeah.
I don't want to say they don't care about what you do. Of course, they have to care about what you do. And that's why we built a customer portal so that our portals could go onto our site and actually see all their own volumes, etc. But really what they want is that when their bin is full, they want it collected and gone. They have run a clean yard most of the time, and they want to know that when that middle bin is full, or they've got a waste bin on the side, whatever it might be, they want to know when they call for it, it gets collected. They don't care that you upgraded or you paid this for that. They are building cars. They are whatever, they're manufacturing, they're engineering, whatever. They're not recyclers. So if you can treat them as a partner and your main job is a logistics company for them, you can build a fruitful relationship with them. And that's how we used to really treat them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a lot of environmental touch points with scrap. We had a customer that was storing material outside, and they were sort of told that they have to find a enclosed place to store the materials
because of rainwater.
Because of the rainwater, exactly. And their solution was, essentially a open air building with a roof. Well, when those things come up and it's not inexpensive, the budgets aren't available. And we heard this conversation sort of on a whim, and the manufacturer didn't know how they were going to sort of get that across the finish line. We just said, that's scrap related. That's recycling related.
Yeah.
So we will build the building for you. We'll be open book with the costs. And in return, this is what the scrap contract needs to look like. Whether we either extend it, or remove $1 or $2 a ton until it's paid back, and the ownership then flips to the manufacturer. But there's a lot of solutions. Wait, you would do that for us? Well,
yeah, they
absolutely.
would love that.
That's part of our, scope of services that we sort of provide. And by the way, if you would have brought in this conversation earlier, we could have had this conversation 6 months earlier and probably be done with the building. Staying in front of that customer, and when the word recycling or scrap or logistics, when those questions come up, you need to be sort of on top of the mind, and you'll get that call. And even if your company can't do it and you're the recycler of choice, partner with somebody that you trust they can, and bring that service to the table. The more that you offer that customer, the stickier the relationship is going to be.
But with the account executives, right? This is why I used to always explain, you have to visit the yards. You have to be in front of them. It's not just the general material that's getting loaded into a bin that you're taking away on a daily basis. There's other projects. They're demolishing a building, or, whatever it might be. Exactly what you say. Now they've got storage issues. Like, if you're not in the conversation, you're not a partner.
Exactly.
Like, it's really that simple.
There's a lot of very strong recycling companies in the Midwest, in the Ohio Valley, that Sims Brothers has competed against. And the good ones, they have boots on the ground. They may not have physically employees at the plants, but they have representatives and account representatives that are making very regular sort of touches into the plant. I've always looked at the plant as any manufacturer, any facility, as an economy. And the reality is, at least my viewpoint is, that you don't necessarily have to make money on everything you do, but the economy, better make money. And there's some lost leaders that happen within that economy, but the deeper you go, the more likely you're going to get that phone call for the opportunity where you can make a nice return. But if you're not there doing the other things, it doesn't matter. So there are pieces of business that I've had over years that I know that this piece in this economy is a lost leader. I'm fine with that, as long as I understand how that relates to the whole piece of business. Those are conversations I share with other, scrap recycling, scrap yard owners. And I think that's a pretty universal thought.
Yeah, sure.
I think it has to be, because it's just like, if you're bidding 19 grades, you may not be the best on 6 of them, but the other 13 better make up for the losses on the 6.
Yeah, absolutely. You love to educate yourself. Similar to me, we just, we soak up information wherever possible. I know how much you love to study, and
just kind of lifelong learning.
Yeah.
What sort of KPIs do you monitor or key metrics do you focus on in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question, because data is becoming more prevalent in everybody's life, and it's entered recycling and scrap, and it's very important. So there's KPIs that we measure: purchase versus sale price, brokerage margin, throughput. That's a little bit more on the commercial side. Transportation metrics. One of the issues is, we all have biases, whether we know it or not. And, one of the biases that is really hard to identify is confirmation bias, which is just basically, I have an opinion about how something should be. And so then I'm going to seek out the data that confirms that my opinion is right. And so it's a nuance, and it's tough to identify, but if I say, hey, listen, if we shorten the stroke in our shear, and that's going to produce a more dense package, which is going to allow us to ship more material in a rail car or in a truck, which is going to lower our cost, and this is going to be the result. If that's my initiative, I have to be careful that I just don't seek out the data that supports that. So I may be right, but what if we just had a slug of very dense material that ran through this year, and we had a demo project that came in that was just very, very dense, heavy beams? Maybe that was the result of a heavier shipment going out, and not necessarily shortening the stroke on the shear. It's data. I had a professor that basically said, there's lies, and there's damn lies. And he was quoting somebody else. I don't know who it was. Lies, damn lies. And then there was, data. And his only point was, you need to be careful that you're really digging into the data to make sure that you understand A, where it comes from, B, that it's accurate, and C, what are you trying to prove? Because the confirmation bias is very real and very easy to, kind of get to an end and say, aha, I was right. See, this report says that. Maybe not.
Yeah, but why? Do you rely on any data?
So in my old world, I did, and I wanted very basic information. I wanted to understand on the purchase side what the average cost of grades were. On a more micro level, I wanted to understand the economies of each account. This account has 2 grades, this account has 10 grades, and together they are producing this for the bottom line. You can get really deep into the woods with data, and those are sort of very high level metrics that I always would keep an eye on a weekly and monthly basis.
So what about when you manage your team, right? And you've got quite a big team, obviously walked around your yard with you the other day. You must have some absolute gems in there that you don't want to lose. How have you managed over time, the idea of people leaving, and also how have you prepared for that and kind of focused on key person risk?
Yeah, so I think that is an issue that almost the whole industry has. There's not a breeding ground for scrap experts, recycling experts. You get in this industry one of many different ways, but there's not necessarily a pipeline, and that's actually one of the reasons why I decided to do the business that I'm doing now. But key person sort of risk. If a company identifies that key person, they need to communicate with them, and at a very low level and a very high level, to understand what that person wants and what drives them and what they value. And what you think they value and what they actually value may be two different things. If you don't have the conversation, you'll never know. And sometimes it's not as complicated as the manager or the owners may think it is. So there's very basic things like you have to treat them with respect, give them the opportunities, but understanding what they value about what they do is very important, because as those opportunities come up, if they value building relationships, then give them more opportunities to build relationships. And if they value money, give them more opportunities to make more money. And you can that conversation can keep going on and on and on. But there's always, a financial component, monetary component to that conversation. And I think the most successful companies have done a really good job at sort of long-term incentivizing those key folks. And it's a financial function, so it can look 100 different ways, but keeping those key folks engaged in their business and working towards sort of the common goal. And I mean, that could be equity, that could be phantom stock, that could be actual stock, that could be, that could be bonuses, it could be short-term bonuses, long-term bonuses, but everybody's interested in that financial component on some level. But again, engage that person, because it may look very different from one person to another. And if you don't have the conversations, then you're not going to know.
So interesting, man. How many times did I sit in management meetings and the team would tell me so-and-so is an absolute guy and this guy's brilliant, right? We need to look after him. And the answer was always, or the question was always, what do we need to do for him? And they would always say, we need to pay him more money. And I would often respond, but do you know if that's what he's looking for? Like, maybe
Did you have the
if
conversation?
exactly. Yeah. Like, it can often be, this guy is brilliant. Call him in. We have a management approve an increase. Call him into into your office. This is now in the management in the yard level, and the guy, you got an increase. That's great. He's very happy. He appreciates it, but he resigns after a month because he wasn't doing what he wanted to do. He wasn't actually enjoying the specific work, or he didn't see the growth opportunities because all you did was give him a little bit more money, but you didn't explain to him that I'm going to put you on a process now to become a manager, or I'm going to put you on certain training, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to build a future. And I love what your answer was, because it's actually engage, communicate. So Garrett, how do you see technology playing a part in our industry in the upcoming years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's probably easiest to talk about that, sort of splitting the two silos between, commercial and operations. Operationally, there's a lot of technology that is coming to the sorting of metals and scrap that I think is very interesting, both on the ferrous and the non-ferrous side, and in the non-metallic side. Those investments started out being very expensive, and there's a very small piece of the industry that can afford them. From what I can see, those technologies are becoming more obtainable for the average scrap company. Now, whether that's AI sorting, whether that's the use of cameras, X-rays, gamma rays, those are all technologies that have been used in the past, and I think they're being married a little bit now with AI. And there's quite a few companies. Sortera Technologies is a company in Indiana that is working on that separation of aluminum, especially from the auto manufacturers. It's a very interesting technology that I think they have proven, and I think there's quite a few other things on the separation of materials, especially on the non-ferrous side. Commercially, when I started in this business, I didn't know if there was a future for trading, because I thought, why isn't a computer going to do this? And fast forward, there's probably a case to be made that there's a more of a place for the person and the actual trader than there was before, because I think the market is much less transparent today. I do wonder when the larger players will try to automate on the ferrous side the procurement procedures domestically for their mills. There's ways of doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not working on that behind the scenes today. But essentially a technology-based system in which they procure all their scrap metals for their mills. That wouldn't be great for somebody like me. It would probably create some different opportunities, but I would not be surprised if that was technology that came sort of to the forefront. I know what you're doing with Buddy is something that is technology based solution that I think is we didn't talk about this, but I think is incredible. It takes what sellers in the States need domestically. The export business, the international export business, is a little bit of a mystery to a lot of companies. The large companies understand it, but once you get outside that sort of spectrum, it's very much a mystery. And there's business there to be had for both the mid-size and small-size scrap companies, and for them to understand those export markets. But there was never a device that allowed them to get there sort of cost effectively and comfortably. So that Buddy technology piece is sort of the first mover in that space, and that's technology based. There's a lot of opportunities like that, both commercially and operationally. Recycling is a little bit of a slow mover and slow adopter, so it's just starting to happen. But I honestly think the next 5 and 10 years, the business will look very different than it does today, both commercially and operationally.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
absolutely. It has to. It's just the way the world is moving at the moment. Recycling won't be left behind. We'll be on the train. Garrett, who would you like to see on Born Scrappy next?
Oh, that's a great question. There's two people that come immediately to mind for probably different reasons. We talked earlier that I love to learn. Learn looks a lot of different ways, and one of the things that's worked best for me is talking to business owners just on a business owner sort of level. There's quite a few people that I engage on a weekly and monthly basis that I don't do any business with, but their knowledge base is beyond incredible. And the two people that come to mind for very different reasons: Gary Clayman at Niles Iron and Metal. I met him literally 26 years ago when I started the business, and he's an incredible operator and an absolute bulldog in everything he does, and a very interesting person.
I met him on my last travels.
Yeah.
Very interesting guy. Great guy.
Do you agree? Yeah,
totally agree. Your explanation is on point.
Yeah, it's fantastic to talk to on every level. And again, I really don't do any business with him, but he's a wealth of knowledge. The other person that falls in that category that every time I call this person for a small thing, it balloons into a half hour, 45-minute conversation about many things, mostly about recycling, but some not. And I always leave these conversations thinking to myself, wow, that was a great 45 minutes spent. And that's Adam Mervis from Mervis Industries. Incredibly intelligent, bright, operationally and commercially savvy person that really understands how to monetize, commercialize what he does. Awesome. Very different people, but incredible resources for everybody.
Yeah, cool. I like to get both ends of the spectrum, so that'll be cool. I'll speak to them both soon. We're going to end up with some quick fire questions.
Oh boy.
Favorite TV series or movie?
The progression probably went Sopranos, to Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is my number one of all time.
Cool.
And I would throw Ozarks as far as a series TV show into that mix. I love sort of strong character based shows, and obviously all three of those are
absolutely. I
know,
got to Ozark like season 3 or something, and I
it's
just
so
didn't have the
good.
time. It was
It's
really
so
good. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Favorite place to visit?
I've been fortunate enough to travel a lot. I've seen a lot of Europe. It's stunning. It's beautiful. I went to Ireland last year. I was blown away. But at my heart, I'm a water beach person. Key West in the United States is incredible. You feel like you've been transported. I love to fish. There's no better fishing in the world than in Key West. So if I had one place to go for the rest of my life, it'd be Key West.
You might need to visit New Zealand. We're quite into fishing here.
Listen, I would love to get that trip on the schedule, and my wife would sign off on that in a second.
I'm sure
she would love to travel there.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
My wife and my sister-in-law, I think, go through a book a day on vacation. I'm a nonfiction reader. I read business books. I have a hard time sort of slowing down to the point where I can really sort of sit down and enjoy a book. All the Jim Collins business books, Good to Great, Great by Design. I take something away from all those. Somebody just sent me one literally 2 days ago. And what was it? It was Zook, The Founder's Mentality, which I just started. Yeah, the author was Zook. The Founder's Mentality, which I just started getting into, which was very, very interesting. I look forward to sort of, when I have a little more time, sort of picking that back up and getting through that. I love podcasts too. That's kind of my supplement to the books. I travel a lot in the car, so that's a sort of nice way to sort of, burn the time when I'm behind the windshield.
Yeah. Let me know how that book goes. I'll be interested in reading it as well.
Yeah.
And have you got a favorite quote?
Oh, wow. So this one is super simple, and I don't know where it comes from, but it was a classmate. I've been thinking about sort of, growing a business and starting a business, for a long time. And when I got out of school this last time, about 4 years ago, there was many, many business owners that I was able to sort of, pull from their experiences. And they all were saying, if not now, when? And that was just kind of like a short response to basically all the excuses that I had for anything. Exactly. And they all got sort of past that, because there was, there's 10 reasons not to do anything. And in your mind, you can sort of say that there's 10 reasons not to do anything. And if you really want to do it, then that first step is literally the hardest step. And looking back, and I've told all of them this, over the last, 60 days, they were completely right. I mean, that's exactly it. The first step is 90% of the battle. I'll be up to 4 or 5, 6 a.m. for months straight. That's the easy part. I mean, that's the decision. Taking that first, the decision to make that first step, to take that first step is all it takes. Yeah. I'm looking at the screen. I have a quote behind me, which basically, I won't read it because it's pretty long. It's basically, what makes a trader? And that was given to me, on my first week of the job when I was a trader for DJ. And I've actually taken that quote to every job that I've had, because it's very simple about basically relying on fundamentals, experience, mathematics, and not convincing yourself that the trade is something other than what it is, and sort of having confidence in it. I'll send this to you, separately. Please do. I was about to ask. Send me a screenshot of it. I'd love to see it. It's Garrett. It's very interesting. Yeah, I really want to see it. Garrett, this has been lots of fun. We could speak. I mean, in Ohio, I had to leave your place in Columbus because I had to get to
Cleveland. We could have just sat for days chatting away. So I have to end it. It's been lots of fun. We'll speak again very soon. We'll be seeing each other at ISRI.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Garrett.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Stu.
Awesome, man. Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.